Let me begin by asking you a question. Have you ever felt lost in your healing journey? Maybe you've been praying for days, months, or even years, yet the healing you seek seems out of reach. It's easy to wonder, why isn't God answering? Where is He in my pain? If you've ever felt like this, you are not alone. So many of us have experienced moments of uncertainty in our healing journey, but today I want to remind you of a profound truth. God has a perfect plan for each of us, including in our healing, even when it seems like nothing is happening. Healing isn't always instantaneous. We live in a world that thrives on quick fixes, where waiting feels like a burden. But friends, God's timing is different from ours. His timing is perfect, and His plan is always working, even when we cannot see it. When we trust in God's timing for our healing, we open ourselves to experience miraculous transformations, not just in our bodies, but in our hearts and spirits as well. Healing is more than just physical, it's spiritual, emotional, and mental. And often God uses the waiting season to do something incredible in our lives. You need to trust God's plan for your healing. That's the first step. I know it's easier said than done, right? Trusting means letting go of control and surrendering to God's timing. But it also means that, despite the pain or uncertainty, God is working for our good. Trust is not passive. It's an active step of faith that requires us to lean into God, even when we don't understand the full picture. In the book of Proverbs, we are reminded about this. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your path straight. Here's the thing. Sometimes we won't understand why we must wait for healing, but that's where faith comes in. God's ways are higher than ours, and His plan always surpasses our limited perspective. But let's be real. Waiting for healing is hard. The journey can be filled with moments of doubt, impatience, and fear. Perhaps you've questioned, is God even listening to my prayers? Or, what if this pain never ends? Doubt creeps in when our timeline doesn't match God's, and we can start to wonder if healing will ever come. Impatience is another common struggle. We live in a world of instant gratification where we expect quick answers. But God often asks us to wait because He's doing something in the process that we may not understand yet. James in his letter tells us to consider it pure joy whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Through patience, God builds character, strengthens our faith, and refines us into the people He created us to be. Then there's fear, the fear that we'll never be healed, or that our pain is too great for even God to fix. But fear is not from God. Paul, in his second letter to Timothy, assures us that God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. When we feel fear creeping in, we must replace it with God's promises. He has the power to heal, and no circumstance is too big for Him to handle. Let's turn to biblical examples that illustrate the importance of faith and patience in God's timing for healing. One of the most profound stories of healing in the Bible is the woman with the issue of blood. For 12 years, she suffered, spent all her money on doctors, and found no relief. But she didn't give up. She believed that if she could just touch the hem of Jesus' garment, she would be healed. And when she reached out in faith, Jesus stopped, turned to her, and said, "Your faith has healed you." Her healing came because of her faith, even after years of suffering. Another example is Lazarus. When Lazarus was sick, Jesus was informed, but didn't come right away. In fact, He waited until Lazarus had died before He arrived. To those around Him, it seemed like He was too late. But Jesus' delay was intentional. When He raised Lazarus from the dead, He showed that God's timing is always purposeful, even when it looks like the end. Sometimes God is waiting to do something greater than what we could ever imagine. We may think He's late, but He's always right on time. Let me also share a personal story. A close friend of mine battled with a chronic illness for years. She prayed for healing, visited doctors, and went through seasons of despair. It wasn't until she fully surrendered her healing to God, trusting His timing and His plan, that she experienced a breakthrough. It didn't come the way she expected, but it came at the perfect time, and not only did her body begin to heal, but her faith grew stronger in ways that transformed her life. Faith is often the key that unlocks healing. In the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus says, "If you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you." Sometimes it's not about having a massive amount of faith, but just having the courage to trust in God's plan, no matter how small your faith may feel. Healing begins when we let go of our fears and doubts and trust that God's plan is unfolding, even in the waiting. You have to always remember this. When you trust God's timing and plan in the healing process, you finally rest and understand that God's timing is perfect, even when you cannot see it. Trusting Him means believing that He knows best. You realize that doubt, impatience, and fear are natural struggles during the waiting period, but you can overcome them by leaning on God's promises and remembering that He is always with you. Also, you learn that faith and patience are crucial. Healing may not come when you expect it, but when you trust God, you open the door for greater miracles. You understand that the stories of biblical figures and real-life testimonies remind you that God is always working, even in seasons of waiting. And finally, you accept that faith, even as small as a mustard seed, can move mountains and unlock the healing that you are longing for. Now, I want to encourage you. If you're in a season of waiting, don't give up. God is faithful, and His plan is working behind the scenes. Trust Him and know that your healing, whether it's physical, emotional, or spiritual, will come at the right time. Elizabeth Elliot once said that faith does not eliminate questions, but faith knows where to take them. When life's storms rage, when uncertainty consumes your thoughts, and when pain pierces your heart, it is easy to feel lost, adrift, and alone. Yet in the midst of that suffering, there is a deep and transformative truth. God's presence is always near, offering solace, peace, and comfort. The idea that the Creator of the universe sees your pain and draws close to you is powerful, and it can be life-changing. Today, I want to talk about how, in your darkest moments, you can be still and know that God's presence will bring you peace, comfort, and healing. Pain is a universal human experience. It affects everyone, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Whether it is the loss of a loved one, the ending of a relationship, the loss of a job, or a health crisis, pain can feel overwhelming. You may find yourself asking, why is this happening? Where is God? But it's in these very moments that God is closest to you. His presence is not always seen in the fixing of problems or the erasing of heartache, but in the stillness that offers peace amidst it. When we read Psalm 46, we come across God's own words, "Be still and know that I am God." His call is to quiet the internal chaos and open ourselves to the knowledge that God is with us. The stillness is not just a command to stop moving physically, but an invitation to stop struggling internally. It's a powerful reminder that even in times of profound grief, uncertainty, or fear, God's presence is steadfast, unwavering, and reliable. Life often brings us face to face with struggles that leave us feeling abandoned, misunderstood, or defeated. We wrestle with grief when the loss of a loved one can make us feel as though a piece of our soul has been torn away, leaving an empty space that no one else can fill. We wrestle with loneliness when we are surrounded by people yet feel utterly alone, as if no one understands the depth of our struggles or the weight of our burdens. We wrestle with fear of the future when the uncertainty of tomorrow stirs up anxiety and the unknown leaves us frozen in fear. And we wrestle with rejection and abandonment when relationships falter or when we are hurt by the ones we trust, making us question our worth and purpose. In these moments, despair can grip our hearts. We begin to think no one understands, that no one sees the depth of our pain. Loneliness often follows, wrapping us in a cloak of isolation. But even when we feel that no one is there, God is there. He doesn't just see our pain, He feels it alongside us. Scripture reminds us that God is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. He draws near to us in our suffering. Let me share a story about a friend of mine, Anna. Anna was a deeply faithful woman, but one day she faced an unimaginable tragedy. Her young son was diagnosed with a terminal illness. No amount of faith, prayers, or well-meaning words from others seemed to lessen her pain. She felt broken, as if God had abandoned her. Where was God in this terrible situation? Yet as she sat by her son's hospital bed in a sea of grief and confusion, something remarkable happened. Amid the beeping of hospital machines and the constant reminders of her son's illness, Anna felt an overwhelming peace, an indescribable stillness that settled into her heart. It wasn't the kind of peace that promised her son's healing, but a deep reassurance that she wasn't facing this alone. In her most profound pain, she began to sense God's comforting presence. Every day from then on, she relied on that stillness, that quiet knowledge that God was with her, carrying her when she could no longer walk on her own. Anna's story reminds us that God's comfort doesn't always mean our pain disappears, but it means that in the midst of that pain, we are never alone. For me, the realization of God's comfort came during a particularly difficult season. I was navigating a personal loss that shook me to the core, and the weight of that grief was unbearable. In my desperation, I sought God, but it felt like He wasn't answering. The silence was deafening, and it seemed like my prayers were hitting a wall. One evening, in the quiet stillness of my living room, I opened my Bible to Psalm 46. I read those words again, "Be still and know that I am God." This time they hit differently. It was as if the command to be still was not just about being quiet, but about trusting that God was present, even if I couldn't feel Him the way I wanted to. That evening, I surrendered my need for control and simply sat in His presence. In that stillness, I began to sense the comfort that had always been there. My circumstances didn't change overnight, but the realization that I wasn't walking alone changed me. The knowledge of God's nearness gave me the strength to face another day, and then another. So what can we take away from all this? There are 3 key insights I want to leave you with today. First, God is always near, even when you feel isolated or abandoned. In fact, His presence is most palpable in the stillness of your heart. Second, pain is not meaningless. It often serves as a crucible through which God refines our faith, making us more attuned to His voice and His presence. Finally, comfort doesn't always mean the removal of pain, but it does mean the presence of peace. This peace surpasses all understanding, and it's available to each of us. If you're walking through a season of pain right now, I want to encourage you to be still. Let go of the striving and the questioning for a moment and rest in the knowledge that God is with you. You are not alone in your struggle, and His presence is a constant source of strength and comfort. Take a deep breath and know that the same God who created the universe is holding you in His hands. Have you ever wondered what it would be like if God's plan for healing was bigger, deeper, and more accessible than we could ever imagine? What if the healing you've been seeking wasn't just about fixing what's broken in your body, but something that reaches far beyond your physical ailments, something that heals your soul, your heart, and your relationships? Imagine for a moment that God's plan for your healing is far more profound, more beautiful, and more powerful than you've ever been told. Could it be that the healing you long for is already within your reach, waiting for you to embrace it fully? Today, I want to talk about a healing plan that often goes unnoticed or misunderstood. It's a plan that has been crafted by the Creator of the universe, a plan rooted in love, grace, and wholeness. And the truth is, God's plan for healing is far better than we might think. Healing is one of the most vital concepts in the realm of faith. It touches every believer's heart because at some point in life, we all experience brokenness, whether physical, emotional, or spiritual. God, in His infinite wisdom and compassion, has designed a way for us to be restored, to be made whole again. This divine healing is not just a quick fix for our suffering, but an essential part of our walk with Him. Throughout the Bible, we see God's hand in the healing of His people. Time after time, the scriptures describe miracles where the blind see, the lame walk, and the sick are restored. These miracles point to God's compassionate nature and His desire for us to live in wholeness. But healing in the biblical sense goes far beyond our immediate and obvious physical needs. It encompasses every part of who we are, our spirit, mind, emotions, and relationships. One of the most common misconceptions about divine healing is that it only pertains to physical ailments. We often think of healing in terms of medical miracles, tumors disappearing, broken bones mending, diseases being cured. And while these are certainly examples of God's power at work, limiting our understanding of healing to the physical alone misses the full picture. Another misconception is that healing requires extraordinary faith or the intervention of someone special, like a pastor or evangelist. Some believe that unless they possess an unshakable, mountain-moving faith, healing will be out of their reach. But here's the truth. God's healing is not limited to a chosen few. It is not based on our ability to muster up enough faith. Instead, it is grounded in His grace and His desire to make us whole. These misconceptions create unnecessary barriers between us and the healing that God intends for us. They make healing seem distant and difficult when, in reality, God's healing is both near and accessible. The truth is, God wants us to experience healing in every aspect of our lives, and He has already provided the way for us to receive it. Let's take a moment to explore the various forms of healing that God offers, as revealed in Scripture. One powerful example of emotional healing is found in the life of David. He once said, "God heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds." David, a man after God's own heart, experienced deep emotional turmoil throughout his life: betrayal, loss, fear, and grief. Yet in the midst of his pain, he found comfort in healing in God. God doesn't just heal our bodies, He heals the deepest wounds of our hearts. Another form of healing often overlooked is spiritual healing, the restoration of our relationship with God. The story of the prodigal son in Luke 15 is a beautiful illustration of this. The son, lost in sin and rebellion, returns home to find his father not only willing to forgive, but eager to restore him. This story speaks of the healing that comes when we turn back to God, when the weight of sin is lifted and we are welcomed into the arms of grace. God's healing also extends to our relationships. In the book of Genesis, we see Joseph, who had every reason to hold bitterness against his brothers for betraying him. Yet in an act of divine grace, Joseph forgives them, and their relationship is restored. God desires to heal the brokenness in our relationships, whether it's with family, friends, or even ourselves. These stories highlight an important truth. Healing takes many forms. It's not confined to the body. God is deeply concerned with the state of our hearts, our spirits, and our relationships. His healing is holistic, addressing every part of our lives. And here's the powerful insight I want to share with you today. God's plan for healing is not just about curing diseases or alleviating pain. His plan is holistic. It covers every part of our lives. When we invite God into our healing journey, we invite Him to touch not just our physical bodies, but our emotions, our spiritual well-being, and our relationships. Think about it. What good would it be if God healed your body but left your heart bitter or your spirit wounded? God's desire is not just to heal us temporarily, but to make us whole in every way. That means healing from the trauma of your past, freedom from the guilt and shame that weigh you down, and restoration in the relationships that matter most. Healing is a journey, a process where God works in us day by day. It's not always instantaneous, and it doesn't always look like what we expect. But trust this, God is always working for your good, shaping you into the person He created you to be. So what have we learned today? First, we have learned that healing is not limited to physical ailments. God's healing encompasses emotional, spiritual, and relational restoration as well. Then we learn that healing doesn't require extraordinary faith. It's about trusting God's love and grace. It's about being open to His work in your life. After that, we learn that God's plan is holistic. He wants to heal every part of who you are, from your body to your spirit to your relationships. Finally, healing is accessible to all. It's not reserved for a select few. God's healing is available to everyone who seeks it. Now, as we reflect on this, I encourage you to take a step of faith. Ask yourself, what area of my life needs healing today? Is it your heart weighed down by grief? Is it your spirit Longing for restoration? Or is it a broken relationship that needs mending? God's healing is more profound than we've imagined. It's available to you right now, at this very moment. Take a moment to invite God into your journey of healing. If this message resonates with you, I would love to hear your thoughts. Share your experiences and insights in the comments below, and let's continue this journey together. Have you ever felt like you're waiting for a miracle, but nothing seems to happen? You pray, you hope, and you believe, but days turn into weeks, and weeks into months. Yet the breakthrough you long for seems distant. In these moments, it's easy to feel abandoned, as if God is silent in your struggles. But what if I told you that waiting is not a sign of God's absence, but a critical part of His divine plan? What if, in this season of waiting, God is preparing you, strengthening you, and walking with you every step of the way? Today, I want to talk about divine support, how God's strength is made perfect in your weakness, especially when you're waiting. Waiting can be one of the hardest experiences in life, particularly when you're waiting for answers, healing, or direction. But through faith, we can come to understand that these moments are not periods of inactivity from God. Rather, they are opportunities for us to grow, trust, and experience His unwavering presence. Let's be honest, waiting feels agonizing, especially when it seems like nothing is changing. We might ask, where is God in all of this? During these times, many feel abandoned or overlooked. The longer we wait, the more we question if God is truly hearing our prayers. Maybe you're waiting for a job, for healing, for restoration in a broken relationship, or for clarity in life. In these waiting periods, it's natural to feel discouraged. We often find ourselves wrestling with doubt. Why would God allow this to happen? Am I not faithful enough? Have I done something wrong? These questions chip away at our sense of hope. But here's what we need to realize. Waiting doesn't mean God is ignoring you. Rather, it often means that He is working in ways that you cannot yet see. The Bible is filled with stories of individuals who face prolonged periods of waiting. Each one teaches us that God's timing is perfect, even when it seems delayed. Consider the story of Abraham and Sarah. God promised them a son, but for years they waited with no sign of the promised child. In their impatience, they tried to take matters into their own hands, which led to complications. Yet even through their struggle and doubt, God remained faithful. Eventually, Isaac was born, just as God had promised, but only after a season of waiting that tested their faith. Then there's Joseph, a man who experienced profound hardship while waiting for God's promise to unfold. Betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, and later imprisoned for a crime he didn't commit, Joseph waited for years for justice. It might have seemed that God had forgotten him, but the truth was, God was preparing him for a greater purpose. By the time Joseph became second in command in Egypt, he understood that all those years of waiting and suffering had shaped him into the man God needed him to be. What seemed like a delay was actually divine preparation. And let's not forget the Israelites who wandered in the wilderness for 40 years, waiting to enter the promised land. In that time, God was teaching them to rely on His provision, molding them into a people ready to receive His blessings. These examples remind us that God is at work even when we cannot perceive it. The delays are not denials but opportunities for growth. In my own life, I've experienced seasons of waiting that tested my faith and patience. There were moments I felt lost, unsure of what God was doing. I remember one particularly dark period when I was waiting for a breakthrough in my career. Every door seemed to close, and I began questioning if God was even listening to my prayers. But in that season of waiting, I learned to draw nearer to God. I realized that He was shaping my character, teaching me to trust Him even when I couldn't see the outcome. Slowly, I began to see that His plan for me was far greater than what I had envisioned. What felt like delay was God teaching me to rely not on my strength, but on His. Each of us faces different struggles: financial hardship, health challenges, family issues. But the truth remains the same. God is with you in your waiting. The very things that feel like obstacles may be the vehicles God is using to strengthen your faith, deepen your relationship with Him, and prepare you for the blessings ahead. One of the most powerful realizations we can have during times of waiting is that God never abandons us. Sometimes we're looking for a miraculous sign or immediate resolution, but God is whispering, "I am here. Trust me." His presence is the miracle we often overlook. A powerful testimony that reflects this came from a friend who had been waiting for years to adopt a child. Each attempt fell through, and she felt like God had forgotten her prayers. But in her waiting, she continued to lean on God, trusting that His timing was perfect. Then when she least expected it, the adoption went through, and it was clear that the child she received was destined to be hers. She realized that God had been working behind the scenes all along, preparing her heart and home for this specific blessing. These moments of divine realization, when we suddenly see how God has been working all along, are what make the waiting worth it. They remind us that God is not only aware of our struggles, but is actively involved in them. So what can we learn from all of this? Waiting is not passive, it's active reliance on God. It's in the waiting that we grow. It's in the waiting that we learn to trust God more fully. When we feel most abandoned, God is closest. As Psalm 27 reminds us, "Wait for the Lord, be strong, and let your heart take courage. Wait for the Lord." When you feel weary from waiting, remember this: God is your strength. He is refining you, preparing you, and teaching you to trust in His perfect timing. He has not forgotten you. He is with you, providing the strength to endure and the grace to persevere. As you reflect on this message, I encourage you to think about your own waiting season. How have you seen God's strength in your struggles? What lessons are you learning in your season of waiting? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I would love to hear your testimony or your challenges. Have you ever felt overwhelmed by life's challenges, searching for peace amidst the chaos? Maybe it's the weight of responsibilities, the pain of loss, or the uncertainty of what tomorrow holds. In those moments, we often long for a peace that goes beyond mere understanding, a peace that is unmoved by circumstances. But where do we find such peace? The answer lies in an eternal truth: God's promises. His word tells us that His peace, unlike the fleeting calm the world offers, transcends our understanding and anchors us in hope. Today, we will explore how God's promises provide that peace, the struggles we face in trying to find it, and the way faith can transform our lives when we trust in the one who never fails. Before diving into God's promises, let's take a moment to acknowledge a universal reality. Life is hard. The human experience is filled with storms. We face pressures from our jobs, financial stress, relationship conflicts, health issues, and the deep soul wounds from past traumas. At times, these struggles feel insurmountable, like waves crashing relentlessly against the fragile walls of our inner world. In those moments, peace can feel distant, almost impossible to grasp. Many people turn to temporary solutions to find solace. Some seek distractions in entertainment, others in work or in relationships, hoping they can drown out the noise. But while these things may offer brief relief, they fail to provide lasting peace. Instead, they often leave us feeling more lost and weary than before. Why is that? Because the peace we need cannot be manufactured through human effort. It must come from a source greater than ourselves. The kind of peace that lasts, the peace that calms the soul in the middle of life's storms, is found only in God's promises. The Bible is filled with promises from God, and one of the most powerful is His assurance of peace. In Philippians 4:7, the Apostle Paul speaks about a peace of God which transcends all understanding, guarding our hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. This peace is not dependent on our circumstances. It doesn't rely on everything going well in our lives. Instead, it comes from trusting that God is in control, no matter how chaotic life becomes. Consider Jesus' own words: "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled and do not be afraid." Here, Jesus makes a clear distinction between worldly peace, which is fleeting and fragile, and His peace, which is enduring and steadfast. It's a promise that no matter what we face, we can rest assured that His peace will remain with us. But how do we access this peace? Through faith. Faith allows us to trust in God's promises even when we cannot see the outcome. Faith assures us that we are not alone, that God is with us, and that His plans for us are good, even when life feels anything but good. Faith, in essence, is the anchor that holds us steady in the storms of life. The biblical letter of Hebrews beautifully describes hope in God's promises as an anchor for the soul, firm and secure. When the waves of life threaten to overwhelm us, our faith anchors us to the unchanging character of God, His love, His goodness, His power, and His promises. Isaiah the prophet also gives us a glimpse into how peace and trust are interconnected. He says to God, "You will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast, because they trust in you." The more we fix our minds on God, the more we are able to rise above the chaos. Trusting in God doesn't remove the challenges, but it does change how we experience them. When our eyes are on the one who controls the storm loses its power to control us. But this is easier said than done. There are moments when fear, doubt, and anxiety cloud our ability to trust. That's why it's crucial to remind ourselves of God's promises daily, saturating our minds with His word, and cultivating a heart of prayer. As we draw closer to God, His peace will fill the deepest parts of our soul, enabling us to face even the most daunting trials. Let me share a story that brings these truths to life. A friend of mine faced one of the hardest moments anyone can endure, the unexpected loss of a loved one. His world was shattered, and the pain felt unbearable. He described those initial days as drowning in sorrow, feeling completely lost. Despite being a person of faith, he admitted that in those moments, he struggled to find any sense of peace. But something changed when he turned back to God's word. He began to meditate on scriptures like Psalm 34. God is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. He clung to God's promise that He would be his refuge and strength in this time of overwhelming grief. Slowly, he began to feel a peace wash over her, a peace that didn't erase his pain, but gave him the strength to endure it. That peace became his anchor, grounding him in God's unshakable promises. Even though his circumstances didn't change, his heart did. He began to see that God was walking with him through the valley, and he found hope and healing in His presence. My friend's testimony is a powerful reminder that no matter how dark the night, God's peace can light the way. The journey to peace begins with faith, with trusting in the one who holds all things in His hands. God's promises are not empty. They are filled with the power to transform our lives. When we anchor our hope in Him, His peace that surpasses all understanding, will guard our hearts and minds. It will carry us through the storms, steady our steps, and help us navigate the uncertainties of life with a calm that cannot be explained by worldly standards. So if you are struggling today, I encourage you to turn to God's promises. Let His peace fill your heart. It may not change your circumstances, but it will certainly change you. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you experienced God's peace in a difficult season of life? Khalil Gibran once said, "Out of suffering have emerged the strongest souls. The most massive characters are seared with scars." Perseverance. That's certainly a word that echoes through the halls of history, through the stories of the world's greatest achievers, and through the personal experiences of each one of us. The most successful individuals are not necessarily those with the highest intelligence or the best opportunities, but those with grit, a powerful combination of passion and perseverance. And today I want to remind you that the foundation of this grit is faith. Perseverance in faith is not about never experiencing pain, doubt, or fear. It's about holding on, trusting the process, and believing that every challenge is an opportunity for growth. Faith is a guiding light when the road gets tough, and perseverance is the engine that keeps you moving forward, even when it feels like you're at a standstill. Every challenge we face has the potential to transform us, but transformation doesn't happen in comfort. Diamonds, as you know, are formed under immense pressure. Without the intense heat and pressure, the coal remains coal. But when subjected to the refining process, a diamond emerges, strong, brilliant, and invaluable. Similarly, pain, struggles, and challenges refine us. They burn away our fears, insecurities, and doubts, leaving behind a stronger, more determined, and focused individual. Whether in pursuit of personal goals, spiritual enlightenment, or professional success, every journey comes with its share of trials. Sometimes these trials are emotional. The feeling of isolation when no one understands your vision, the fear of failure that whispers in your ear, or the crushing weight of expectations that feel impossible to meet. There are also physical challenges, sleepless nights, endless hours of work, and the toll that stress can take on your body. The road to success can feel long and unforgiving, and as humans, it's natural to feel worn down. The temptation to quit often lingers just around the corner, waiting for that moment of vulnerability to strike. In those moments, perseverance fueled by faith becomes critical. We must remember that the most challenging moments are often the precursors to our greatest breakthroughs. Just as a muscle grows stronger by being torn and rebuilt, our souls and characters are refined through pain and perseverance. Every setback, every rejection, and every hardship has the potential to either break us or build us, depending on how we respond. Let's look at the stories of those who faced monumental challenges and emerged stronger. One such example is Oprah Winfrey. Born into poverty, subjected to abuse, and facing rejection early in her career, Oprah's path was anything but easy. She could have given up, but instead she persevered. Her faith in her vision of creating a platform for meaningful conversations and helping others remained steadfast. Today, Oprah stands as one of the most successful media moguls and philanthropists in the world, a testament to the power of resilience and faith. Another powerful story is that of Nelson Mandela. After spending 27 years in prison, separated from his family, and enduring unspeakable hardships, Mandela could have easily become embittered. But instead of letting his pain defeat him, he allowed it to refine his purpose. His faith in justice and humanity kept him going. After his release, Mandela led South Africa out of apartheid and into an era of peace and reconciliation. His story is a living example that pain can indeed strengthen and refine us into leaders who change the world. There are countless stories like these, of ordinary people facing extraordinary adversity and choosing to persevere in faith. Whether it's the entrepreneur who faced bankruptcy multiple times before finally achieving success, or the single parent working multiple jobs to provide for their children, the common thread is their refusal to give up. They trusted that the pain they were experiencing was temporary and that something greater was on the horizon. In every journey, there comes a pivotal moment. It's often the darkest before the dawn. Maybe you're at your lowest point, thinking that you've given all you can give, but it's in this very moment that a breakthrough is possible. This is the space where faith becomes essential. Faith is the inner knowing that something good is waiting, even if we can't see it yet. It's the belief that the obstacles you face are not here to destroy you, but to prepare you. And when you embrace that truth, everything changes. Suddenly, the pain you're enduring is no longer just suffering. It's part of your transformation. Consider the story of J.K. Rowling. Before Harry Potter became a global sensation, she was a single mother living on welfare. She received multiple rejections from publishers before one finally took a chance on her manuscript. At any point, she could have stopped believing in her dream, but she didn't. Her perseverance, bolstered by her faith in the story she wanted to tell, led her to unimaginable success. The lesson? Your breakthrough could be just one step beyond the point where most people quit. As we come to the end of this reflection on perseverance and faith, I hope you've seen how pain, while difficult, has the power to refine and strengthen you. The challenges you face today are molding you into the person you are meant to become tomorrow. Every tear, every setback, and every moment of doubt is not in vain. Remember, faith and perseverance work together. Faith gives you the strength to keep going when logic tells you to quit, and perseverance ensures that you continue to grow and evolve, even through the most trying times. Embrace the process because every hardship is a stepping stone to your success. Now, I want to hear from you. What challenges are you facing in your life right now? How are you using faith to keep going? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. I'm sure your story will inspire others. And if you found this message uplifting, don't forget to subscribe for more content on spiritual healing, personal growth, and perseverance. Together, we can encourage one another to push through the pain and emerge stronger on the other side. Let's keep growing, keep believing, and keep moving forward.